Imagine opening a letter and seeing your child's future stripped away in black and white. Imagine reading words from the King of England himself, words so final, so absolute, that no amount of pleading, reasoning, or public outrage could change them. This is the moment that has left Meghan Markle in tears, the moment that has set the entire royal world buzzing in disbelief, and the moment that has shocked millions around the globe. King Charles has made a decision. One so controversial, so unprecedented, that it challenges centuries of tradition. He has declared that Archie and Lilibet, two innocent children born into the royal lineage, will never, ever be allowed to hold the titles of prince or princess. No exceptions, no compromises. The consequences of this decision ripple far beyond the palace walls, and tonight, we're diving deep into exactly what happened, why it matters, and how the royal family is now forever changed. But before we continue, please subscribe and turn on the notification bell for updates. It all begins with a question. What drives a monarch to deny his grandchildren the titles that, historically, were almost guaranteed by birthright? Is it a matter of tradition, personal principle, or is there a deeper, darker tension at play, one rooted in decades of royal protocol, family feuds, and personal grievances that the public can only glimpse from a distance? This is not just a story about titles. It is a story about power, legacy, betrayal, and the fragile line between love and authority within one of the world's most famous families. And as we explore it, you might find yourself asking, what would you do if you were in Meghan's shoes? If your child's future, their identity, was suddenly dictated by a decree you had no control over? Meghan Markle has faced scrutiny, criticism, and intense media attention for years. Her every move, from her marriage to Prince Harry to her public statements, has been dissected under the unforgiving lens of the global press. Yet nothing has been more emotionally devastating than this latest decision. Reports indicate that Meghan broke down when she read the letter confirming Charles's ruling. Her hopes for her children's formal recognition as members of the royal family, something she had long advocated for quietly and privately, were dashed in an instant. And it was not just disappointment. There was shock, a sense of betrayal, and an urgent fear for what this meant for Archie and Lilibet's place in the monarchy and in history. But to truly understand the gravity of this situation, we need to rewind. The Sussexes' relationship with the royal family has been complicated, layered with both affection and tension, cooperation and conflict. From the very beginning, Meghan and Harry were viewed with a mixture of hope and suspicion. Their marriage was celebrated by millions, but it also unsettled traditionalists within the palace. Every public appearance, every interview, and even every charity initiative was scrutinized. The media frenzy around them was relentless, often harsh, and, at times, unforgiving. Yet, despite this, Meghan remained steadfast, determined to carve out a space for her family within the royal framework while maintaining her independence and values. And then came the whispers. Quiet at first, almost imperceptible, but steadily growing louder. Murmurs about family meetings, private discussions, and debates over the future of Archie and Lilibet's titles. Reports suggest that tensions reached a fever pitch during private gatherings at Buckingham Palace and other royal residences. Charles, deeply committed to upholding tradition, reportedly expressed concerns that granting these titles could set a precedent he deemed unmanageable. Meanwhile, Meghan, protective and passionate, pushed back privately, advocating for recognition and security for her children. This tug-of-war remained hidden from public view, leaving the world unaware that the storm was brewing beneath the polished surface of royal protocol. But what exactly are we talking about when we say titles? Being a prince or princess is more than a ceremonial designation. It is a symbol of lineage, privilege, and responsibility. It grants access to official events, establishes precedents in public life, and, most importantly, embeds a child within the historical fabric of the monarchy. To deny these titles is to deny a piece of identity, a marker of belonging that carries emotional, social, and historical weight. For Meghan, the denial represents not just an obstacle to her children's future, but a deeply personal challenge. The heartbreak of seeing her children's rightful acknowledgement withheld due to decisions made in the upper echelons of power. The shockwaves of Charles's decision extend beyond the walls of the palace. Once the story leaked to the media, the world reacted with a mixture of outrage, disbelief, and fascination. Headlines around the globe screamed about the king's final decision and Meghan's visible distress. Social media erupted with commentary, speculation, and support for the Sussexes. Public figures weighed in, each with their own interpretation, each adding fuel to the narrative. But even amidst this global spectacle, the question remains, why now? Why at this moment? Sources close to the family suggest that timing played a crucial role, tied to internal deliberations, ceremonial obligations, and perhaps even personal tensions that had reached a tipping point. Meanwhile, Meghan herself has not been silent. Privately, she is said to be strategizing, seeking counsel from trusted advisors, and weighing her options in response to this ruling. Her resolve, forged through years of public scrutiny, is being tested in ways that strike at the very heart of her family. Observers note that this moment could define not only her children's futures, but also Meghan's ongoing influence and presence within the royal landscape. The stakes are monumental, and the emotional intensity cannot be overstated. What makes this story even more compelling is the sheer finality of the king's decision. Reports indicate that Charles made it abundantly clear that his ruling was non-negotiable. No compromise, no exceptions. This is what makes the narrative so gripping. Unlike many royal disputes, which can drag on in months of discussion and quiet maneuvering, this decision arrived as an immediate, irreversible decree. For Meghan, the letter represents an endpoint, a hard boundary drawn by a monarch who is resolute in upholding tradition and authority. And yet, as we explore this story in detail, the layers of intrigue deepen. Who else in the family supported or opposed this decision? How did William and Kate react? And what private conversations took place behind the palace doors? What role did advisors, courtiers, and even international media play in shaping the environment that led to this ruling? And perhaps most intriguingly, what personal motivations drove Charles to act with such finality, knowing full well the global attention it would attract? These are questions that we will answer step by step, unraveling the drama and tension that have brought us to this shocking moment. By now, you may be wondering, is this just another royal headline, another story of intrigue and scandal designed to captivate the public? The answer is no. This is a defining moment, a decision that will have lasting ramifications for the monarchy, for Meghan and Harry, and most importantly, for Archie and Lilibet. Their future within the royal family is no longer simply a matter of ceremony. It is a matter of legacy, identity, and history. And in that sense, this is a story that demands attention, a story that will be analyzed, debated, and remembered for generations to come. But what comes next? What happened in the moments immediately after Meghan read the king's letter? How did the family react behind closed doors? And what secret developments might still be unfolding, hidden from the world's gaze? The answers lie in the chapters ahead, each revealing a new layer of intrigue, conflict, and emotion. From private palace meetings to the public backlash, from historical precedents to personal confrontations, we will explore every dimension of this royal drama. And so, as we prepare to dive into the full story, remember this: nothing in this saga is as simple as it seems. Every smile at a public event, every carefully phrased statement, every quiet gesture carries meaning, intention, and consequence. The story of King Charles's decision, Meghan's heartbreak, and the fate of Archie and Lilibet is a story of power and principle, of love and loyalty, of family and duty. And it is a story that has only just begun to unfold. But the real shock? What Charles said to Meghan in that private meeting, the exact words, the tone, the warning, is something no one outside the palace has ever heard. Until now. And what comes next will set the stage for a series of revelations that nobody could have predicted, shaping the future of the royal family in ways that are both dramatic and deeply emotional. The introduction sets the stage, the tension, and the stakes. And as we move forward into Chapter 1, you'll see just how the storm began, what events led to this fateful decision, and how a single phone call changed everything in ways that no one outside Buckingham Palace could have imagined. It all began with whispers. Soft at first, almost imperceptible. Rumors floated through the halls of Buckingham Palace like shadows at dusk, subtle, unnoticed, until they weren't. Staff members exchanged uneasy glances over afternoon tea. Courtiers passed messages in hushed tones, careful to speak beneath the radar of cameras and microphones. There were murmurs about meetings, phone calls, and private dinners that no one outside the royal circle was meant to know about. Yet somehow, the tension inside the palace was palpable, electric, and almost suffocating. Something was brewing, something that would rock the foundations of the family, and nobody could stop it. Imagine being a fly on the wall during these days of quiet storm. You would have seen Meghan Markle arrive in London, her expression calm, but her eyes betraying concern. Prince Harry by her side, trying to remain composed, yet unable to mask the subtle strain that comes when a couple knows their future is under scrutiny. Palace aides whispered about the couple's arrival weeks in advance, hinting that conversations of critical importance would take place. Conversations that would decide the fate of not just Meghan and Harry, but their children, Archie and Lilibet. The palace, traditionally a place of routine and ceremonial splendor, now hummed with tension. Every corridor, every meeting room, every office seemed to vibrate with unspoken conflict. The Sussexes were not strangers to scrutiny. They had weathered it before. Media scandals, paparazzi frenzy, and public judgment had become almost daily companions. But this was different. This was a storm that came from inside the very institution that was meant to protect them. Not journalists, not paparazzi, not even distant political figures. This storm came from Buckingham Palace itself, and it centered on one question that would define the future. Should Archie and Lilibet ever carry the titles of prince and princess? From the moment Meghan and Harry walked into the palace for these private discussions, the dynamics were electric. Reports indicate that Charles had been concerned about the long-term implications of granting titles to children born outside the immediate line of succession. He reportedly worried about setting a precedent that could complicate the monarchy for generations. And while these concerns were couched in formal language about tradition and protocol, the underlying tension was unmistakable. Meghan, naturally protective of her children, disagreed. Privately, she argued that her children deserved recognition, not just as grandchildren of the sovereign, but as rightful members of the royal lineage. The clash of principles was inevitable. One evening, sources say, a particularly tense meeting took place in one of the palace's private drawing rooms. Only a handful of key advisors were present, along with Meghan, Harry, and Charles. The conversation was described as polite on the surface, civil, measured. But underneath, every word was loaded, every gesture weighted with meaning. Meghan reportedly raised her voice at one point, trying to advocate passionately for her children's titles. Charles, calm but resolute, reminded her of the importance of precedent and the responsibilities attached to royal recognition. The room reportedly fell into a heavy silence after that, the kind that follows when everyone knows the outcome is uncertain, yet unavoidable. Outside the palace, the tension was invisible. The world saw Meghan attending charity events, wearing tailored suits, smiling for cameras. Harry made public appearances, engaging with veterans and community leaders. The veneer of normalcy masked a deep undercurrent of anxiety. It is a peculiar reality of royal life. The public only sees what is curated, what is polished, what fits a narrative of tradition and decorum. Meanwhile, behind closed doors, entire futures are being debated and decided, with consequences that reach far beyond the palace gates. And then came the rumors. Leaks, vague and contradictory, began surfacing in the press. Some suggested that Meghan had already been informed of the king's intentions, while others hinted that Charles was wavering. Courtiers were split, some urging caution, others pressing for decisive action. The palace staff, usually silent and disciplined, were suddenly at the center of gossip. The pressure was mounting, not just from family members, but from the inevitability of history itself. Every decision, every hesitation, would be scrutinized for decades to come. Consider the emotional toll on Meghan and Harry. For Meghan, it was not merely about titles. It was about security, identity, and recognition for her children. Archie, the eldest, is a bright, curious child who had already been exposed to the pressures of public life in a way few children ever are. Lilibet, younger and still forming her understanding of the world, was equally caught in the crossfire. To deny them royal titles was to deny them a piece of their heritage, a formal acknowledgement of their place in history. Meghan reportedly felt this as a direct challenge to her role as a mother and protector, intensifying every emotion she had experienced during the years of media scrutiny and royal tension. Harry, meanwhile, was caught between loyalty to his father and fierce protection of his family. Those close to him said that he approached the matter with a combination of strategy and emotion. On one hand, he wanted to avoid public conflict, preferring to handle matters privately. On the other, he could not ignore the injustice he perceived in his children being denied recognition they rightfully deserved. Sources hint that Harry's conversations with Meghan during this period were intense, full of strategy, worry, and deep emotional reflection. He is a man who has learned to navigate public spectacle with poise, but the personal stakes here were unlike anything he had faced before. Meanwhile, palace insiders report that Charles's advisors were divided. Some encouraged the king to hold firm, citing historical precedent and the importance of upholding tradition. Others warned that denying Archie and Lilibet their titles could ignite public backlash and further strain family relations. The king reportedly weighed these opinions carefully, recognizing the potential fallout. But one thing was clear. Charles was determined to assert his authority, to make a ruling that was unambiguous, final, and in line with his vision for the monarchy. Even the palace staff, who rarely speak publicly, were reportedly anxious. They sensed the tension, the impending decision, and the potential for a public storm. Courtiers described the atmosphere as electric with anticipation, a rare moment where the machinery of the royal household seemed to hold its breath. Some whispered that the decision had been contemplated for months, that Charles had weighed every possible scenario, every consequence, every emotional response. And yet, for Meghan and Harry, it must have felt sudden, inevitable, and devastating all at once.